trying to get in the window just now.
Then you're very welcome at Colby. we see pets, siblings, all sorts of fun on our webcams all the time.
We might get daughters coming in. You can hear the dog outside. I think a chicken was running by and it got him going. So I hope he doesn't do this the whole time.
Perfect. Well, no worries if he does. It looks like we're live. Hi, Facebook.
Okay, we did it.
We did it. We're so excited. Thank you for joining us. So I'm Nicole O'Connor. I'm the director of the online elementary program for Colby Academy. And today I'm joined with a lot of my students who just participated in a very exciting event at Colby, the variety show, memorizing poems, sharing them with their classmates. And I'm also joined by Ben Hatke, who is an author and illustrator of the #1 New York Times best-selling Zita the Spacegirl trilogy, a favorite of many Colby students, and the Eisner award-winning Little Robot, as well as the Mighty Jack trilogy and the picture books Julia's House for Lost Creatures and Nobody Likes the Goblin. Ben lives, works, and practices archery in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley. He's happy in a canoe. And he's also married to Anne Bernatoli, who is a graduate of the one and only Colby Academy.
Colby.
So welcome, Ben. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So this was going to be a read aloud. I thought what I'd like to do, what I was hoping to do, was read 2 stories to you guys, and then maybe save some time at the end for, we could do a few questions. And I think we can. I think it looks like the chat is a really good way to do that. And maybe if you can help moderate a bit, that would be super helpful. So what I was going to do today. So I do a lot of you guys. It seems to be from the comments on the side that you guys are really into comics, which I think is amazing. Comics have always been a very special kind of storytelling for me. I something about the language, something about words and pictures working together has always been one of my favorite things in the world. So even before I was making comic books, I was making comics to entertain my friends, right? Even when I got to be like a big kid, and even like as a young adult, even when I was like in college, I was still making comics to entertain the people around me. And in college, I even had something called bathroom comics, which was where I would tape a big piece of paper up in our shared bathroom, because I lived in a dorm, and I would just add to this story every day. Every time I went to the bathroom, I add a little bit more to the story. And then, outside, if you were walking by, you could sometimes hear people laughing in the bathroom because they were reading the next part of the story. So that was fun. And so I always kind of connected with comics, but there's another, but I like stories of all kinds. And there's another kind of story that is also sort of a combination of words and pictures that also kind of got hold of me. And that is the picture book. So here, and a picture book is it's definitely words and pictures working together to tell a story. But these work really well as read alouds. So the ones I was going to read, this is my book, Julia's House for Lost Creatures. But what I was going to read to you guys today was, I was thinking we could read 2 stories. I was going to read the second in the Julia's House. There's going to be 3 Julia's House stories in all. And this is the second one, Julia's House Moves On. And I thought I would read that to you today. But I wanted to start, I wanted to warm myself up with Nobody Likes a Goblin. Because this one has voices, like I like to do the troll's voice and I like to do Goblin's voice in this book, and really helps me warm up and get into reading. So so sit back, relax, and let's read Nobody Likes a Goblin. Now, can I ask a quick question? This looks backwards to me. Is it frontwards to you guys? Are you seeing? Okay, it's good. Okay. Just wanted to make sure, because to me, when I'm looking at the screen here, it's reversed. So without further ado, let's look at Nobody Likes a Goblin. All right. Here's our title page. with a little mouse rat, actually, sitting in a crown. Watch for the rats. Watch for the
Rats.
Here we go. Our story starts in a dark forest at the entrance to a deep, dark dungeon. Nobody likes a goblin. Can everybody hear me pretty well? Am I coming through okay? All right, because here we go.
Yep.
Deep in a dungeon, the bats were sleeping soundly. And you can see that the middle bat is actually woken up by the snores of the other bats, and even the spider is snoring up there. The bats were sleeping soundly, and Goblin woke to a new day. See, he sleeps in this little cubby in the dungeon, and you can see he's got his book that he's reading, his little candlestick, some mushrooms. I think those are like for midnight snacks. Goblin woke to a new day. He lit the torches. He fed the rats. He gnawed on an old boot for breakfast, and he thought about the day ahead. I think I'll go see Skeleton, said Goblin. The Skeleton was Goblin's very best friend. They counted bats. They played roll the dice, and Skeleton told Goblin stories from the days when he was a mighty warrior. He even let Goblin try on his old crown. So you can see all the treasures in here in the big treasure room. This one, somebody asked me about this on Twitter today. It's a Roman dodecahedron. And I put that in there because I'm fascinated by them. There are these things, nobody quite, they come from, around the year 0, actually. They found it, 400 BC as early as, and nobody quite, they're interesting. They're these little metal dodecahedrons. They're multi-sided things with little holes in them, and nobody quite knows what they're for. And when I was making this book, I was so fascinated by them, I decided to put one in. So anyway, yeah, that was another. I'm gonna have a hard time not having digressions. Let's keep moving on the story. The counted bats, they played roll the dice, and Skeleton told goblins stories from the days when he was a mighty warrior. He even let Goblin try on his old crown. Look at me, said Goblin. I'm the Goblin King. But then came the sound of boots on stone. Adventurers were storming the dungeon. And so here we have our crew of adventurers. We've got our thief, our dwarven warrior, our barbarian, who's a big elf, and our wizard leading the group. They scared the rats. Let me get closer. Ugh. They scared the rats. They knocked over the torches. They plundered the pantry. Goblin hid under his bed until they went away. The adventurers took everything. They took the gold, they took the maps, the books, the scrolls, and they took Skeleton. And there's Goblin standing alone in the treasure room. So Goblin put on his crown and walked out into the wide world to find his friend. Now, Goblin had one neighbor, a hill troll that lived in a cave nearby. I'm looking for my friend Skeleton, Goblin told him. I saw your friend, said the troll. He was with the adventurers who took my honk-honk away over the mountains. I'll get your honk-honk back, said Goblin. Be careful, said the troll. Nobody likes a goblin. I'll be okay, said Goblin, and he walked up into the hills. And away over the mountains. This is one of those big 2-page spreads. And there's the land beyond the mountains. Now, on the far side of the mountains, Goblin met a farmer. I'm looking for my friend Skeleton, Goblin told him, said Goblin. Ah, shrieked the farmer, a filthy goblin! And he chased Goblin down the road. The farmer chased Goblin right through an inn full of elves. "Ugh," said the innkeeper, "a disgusting little goblin." "Catch it," cried the elves. And they tried. So now the trail of people chasing Goblin is getting bigger. The farmer, the innkeeper, and the elves chased Goblin to the edge of the haunted swamp. And there Goblin saw the adventurers pulling a cartload of spoils, and sitting atop the treasure was Skeleton, shouted Goblin. "Get that Goblin," shouted everyone. Goblin grabbed hold of his friend and ran. Goblin and Skeleton ran through the haunted swamp until they passed a cave. "We'll hide in here," said Goblin. And there's everybody looking for them. And there's Goblin and Skeleton running into the cave. And there is the one little ghost in the haunted swamp. He's actually very nice. "They're looking for us," said Skeleton. "They will find us soon." "I know," said Goblin. "Troll was right. Nobody likes a goblin." "Well, I like a goblin," said Skeleton, and the two friends sat together and waited for their doom. But then, "Excuse me," said a voice from the back of the cave. Goblin turned and saw many eyes staring at him from the darkness. "Do you know who else likes a goblin?" said the voice. I bet you guys know.
A goblin.
More goblins! And Goblin here is so happy that his crown is like floating above his head. He's so thrilled. "We saw your crown," said the other goblins. "Are you the Goblin King?" Goblin thought for a moment. "Yes," he said. "Yes, I am." "We must defend the Goblin King," said the other goblins. Oop. Come on, little book. There we go. And they did. Here is our big battle. All the goblins working together. And our two friends sitting there in the back, and there's our little ghost again. The farmer, the innkeeper, and the elves ran for the hills, and the adventurers, well, they were never heard from again. And so Goblin and Skeleton and their new friends traveled together, back through the swamp, up the road, over the mountains. This is like the big travel scene here. Over the mountains, down the hill, and Troll gets his honk honk back, down the hill, and home to the dungeon. The end. So there we go. That is Nobody Likes a Goblin. Yeah. So you can see I really love that as a read aloud. It's fun to read. I like doing Goblin's voice. Always gets my vocal cords warmed up. So now let's, if you'd like, we can travel to another little story world, which might be kind of connected to Goblin's world. We're going to meet more creatures and have a few more adventures, but this time with our friend Julia. And this is Julia's house moves on.
I have a friend named Julia.
Oh, I have a daughter named Julia. It's a good name. So here is Julia.
My sister has a friend named Julia.
You really? It's such a beautiful name.
And
Such a good name.
I like your books. They're really nice.
Oh, thank you. That's nice to hear. Well, so at the beginning of this book, we have this little gilly creature. He's a little like woods fairy. and I've drawn, it's an actual folklore creature, like an Irish folklore creature, but I've drawn it as almost a clod of dirt with a flower on top. So here he is wandering. We can see kind of maybe wandered out of this flower pot. And here we have, here he is wandering over the hills. And we can see that they might be putting in a bridge up here in Julia's house. That might be the reason why Julia's house by the sea is getting a little restless. So here we go. So we open up, we see Julia running out her door, down the steps, over to her mailbox. She grabs hold of the mailbox and pop! She pulls it out of the ground and she looks behind her and there's this little creature. So Julia's house was for lost creatures of every kind. But the house was getting restless. It was time to move on, and everyone could feel it. The goblins were cranky and full of mischief. The mermaid spent her days in languid sighs. The trolls the ghost had faded, and the trolls just stared out of the window while reciting poems. Yes, it was time to move on. I have a plan for this, said Julia. She really did. Books were packed, boxes stacked. She had a nice spot picked out in the mountains. But then the house started moving on its own. Oh, look. I put Goblin in there just so we could remember that he's around. Hey, shouted Julia. Where are you going? This wasn't part of the plan. But the turtle didn't care about the plan. Not at all. So the turtle is going its own way and splashing down into the ocean. And if we wonder why, could it be that the turtle has spied another turtle out at sea and has fallen in love? That could be the reason. But nevertheless, here's Julia's house splashing into the ocean, breaking free of the turtle who has found this beautiful little sea turtle. Big sea turtle, actually. The tattered remains of Julia's house drifted on a lonely sea. Things looked bleak. The creatures sloshed about in the water, and they looked to Julia. I have a plan for this. Or, don't worry, she said. I have a plan for this. She really did. Kick, shouted Julia. Faster! The creatures kicked as fast as they could. The house listed dangerously to one side. And then the goblins spotted fins circling in the water. Oh no. The creatures scrambled back on board. The house was sinking faster. Don't worry, Julia called. I have a plan for this. She ran to her workshop. She tore through her boxes. She sounded Triton's horn. There's Triton's horn. It's all covered in crustaceans and tentacles and shells. And what does she summon with Triton's horn? Huge tentacles come and smash up the sharks. Oh my goodness. And there's Julia's house being flopped about on the sea. But at least the sharks are getting a beating. When the Kraken sank below the waves, things were worse than ever. The creatures looked to one another. I can make a plan for this, whispered Julia. Julia ran to her workshop, but when she emerged, the creatures were paddling to the horizon. Julia was alone with her plan. Julia stared out over the lonely sea. She opened her hand and watched her plans float away on the wind. But then the sea erupted in light and song. Something enormous has risen out of the water. The queen of the sea lifted Julia's house up out of the water. Whoop. The creatures were all there. We have a plan for this, they said. Oh, is the dragon Felix from Mighty Jack? And then Luke says, I think it's just the same species. Good job, Luke. That's what I think too. They really, we have a plan for this, they said. They really did. The goblins hammered and the robots wired. The ghost collected sheets and blankets, and the ghillie grew and grew and grew until, come on, book, you can change. Until the house kind of just takes off. Waving goodbye as the house floats away. Ooh, here we go. All the creatures on deck looking out at the clouds. Julia's house set a course through the clouds. The way ahead was uncertain, and it was anyone's guess where they would land. Julia was all out of plans. And that was okay. The end. And there's Julia looking ahead to the horizon. Oh, so that is Julia's House Moves On. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for your such attentive listening. It's sometimes it's hard to know how things are, but I like seeing the comments because it's hard to know, you know, on over Zoom, like how you're doing with the reading. But it seems like everybody's enjoyed this.
I really liked the books.
Oh, thank you. Well, if you guys want to send in, do you want to do like 10 questions?
Yeah.
Is that a good number? What do you think?
I think that sounds great. I grabbed a few that were coming in as you were reading, so we can start with those, and then I'll try and catch up with some that come in the chat in the meantime. And so I think 10 sounds great. Thank you. And thank you so much. That was amazing. I don't know if you could see all the engaged students up in the little film strip up top, but
I'm seeing some of them. Yes, it's good.
Good. Okay, so the first question was, how long does it take for you to draw and color just one page? And what is your favorite medium to work with?
Ooh, one page. Okay, well it really depends on if it's going to be comics or picture books. For comics, I do ink on paper, and just give me one. I think I've got an example here. Here we go. Here, like, okay, so a comics page looks something like this. This is an original page from Mighty Jack. No, from Mighty Jack and the Goblin King. And I number them. So this is I guess this is page 39 from that book. And then this will get scanned, and then I'll color that digitally. But when it's these kind of pages, I'll do several of these in a day. But then if we're talking about picture books, I work in ink and watercolor. So those pages, one second again. Those pages end up being completely, let me push this off. Here is actually, I had one of them framed. This is the page in Julia's house for lost creatures when she opens the door and all the creatures are waiting there for her. So you can see kind of what size that is. And so this is the original ink and watercolor painting. And those can take a couple days or more. And then sometimes, I know I'm giving a long answer to this question, but sometimes there will be pages like, sometimes I have a quality control department at my house, and that consists of my daughters and very often my wife as well. And this page, this was a big, sort of similar to what I showed you, but this was a big full watercolor page that I did. And, I spent a couple days, doing the roughs for it and then laying it out and then putting it on the light table and putting on good watercolor paper again. And then with that one, my daughters came in and they said, that's good. And they were not amazed by it. And like, you could tell by the way they were saying that's good, that was okay. So the first version of that page I threw away, and then I started completely over from scratch. So sometimes you'll work on a page like that, and you have to be very brave, and have to be like, sometimes you have to know when to kind of start over and not get too attached to every one version of the thing, because the thing that you want to be attached to is the whole book. So anyway, yeah, that was something.
Very good.
So it can change, it can vary.
Wasn't it William Faulkner who said, in order to be a good writer, you have to be prepared to kill your darlings or something?
Yeah.
You have to be
Yes.
ready to
Kill your darlings, and also like, and yeah, you'd be being willing to let go of something, even though you put some work into it. And also, all writing is rewriting, right? So you write stuff, but it's just a draft, and then you rewrite it. So another good question is, how many drafts do I go through, even for a picture book? So Julia's House Goes Home is going to be the third Julia's House book, and that went through like eight versions, 8 very different versions. So till it became what it was. So you never know. Anyway.
All right, we have another question that says, what is your favorite book or comic?
I don't know. That's a good question. I can tell you one that I really like. Is that good? I've got it. I'm looking at it. I'll grab it in just a second. Here is a book that came out this year that I really very much like. It's called This Was Our Pact, and it's one of the best sort of like dreamiest summer adventure stories that I've read in a long time. It's so beautiful, and it's so much like a strange dream that you would have. And it's about 2 kids on bikes, and their town has a little festival, and where they put these lanterns in the river every year. And these kids have made a promise to ride their bikes at night to find out where the lanterns go. And it goes on from there. It gets more magical from there as they follow lanterns down the river. It's great. So I assume that's what you were asking about, like comics that I like. That's one that came out recently that I really love. So.
Very good. That one looks great. So I guess, in that spirit of graphic novels, do you have any advice to aspiring graphic novelists?
Oh yeah. Especially when you're just starting out, I think that well, yeah, one is read a lot and write a lot. So if you want to write stories, you want to read a lot of stories. And the other major one is make sure you're making creativity a habit, right? So if you like the idea of doing this, you want to make it sort of a habit. You want to me, or even let's talk about, so my daughter Angelica she's 18 now, and she's definitely gotten sort of a very strong she makes something every day, right? And that's sort of the habit, creating every day, whether it's some little thing. It doesn't have to be a beautiful finished piece, but just the habit of making something every day, filling sketchbooks. And in Angelica, with my daughter Angelica, like some days I'll notice if she's very grumpy, and it's usually because she's gotten such a habit of creativity that she'll get grouchy if she hasn't sat down and drawn something that day. I'm not gonna try to bring them over here, but I'm looking at the shelf across from me, and it's got, I don't know, 50 or so sketchbooks and journals that I've filled up through the past 5, 6, 7 years. But it makes a huge stack because for a finished book, the amount of material that actually goes into a finished book, there's so much behind the scenes because you're just making ideas. And also the other thing for aspiring creators, make something every day, and also don't worry about what you're making, right? You're making things in order to get better at it. So don't worry if they're not perfect, right? It's not about making a lot of perfect things. It's about the act of making things, and slowly, if you keep last thing, if you keep a sketchbook for a year and you actually draw in it every day, for a year, you draw something every day for a year in a book. If you look back to the first ones you did, you'll see a huge change from those first pages to your final pages. You'll notice, you'll be able to see, but it happens so slowly that like you can't see yourself growing either, right? But if you mark on a wall, and every week you make a little mark, you actually at the end of the year, you've grown. And so the same works with drawing and writing stories.
Okay, good. This is so great. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
There's one question that's been in the chat quite a bit, so I'll skip ahead to this one. And
okay.
a lot of the kids are asking, who was the girl in the Goblin story?
Oh, I get this question a lot. Yes, this question comes up because, like we were talking about with drafts, right? Sometimes earlier drafts, and then sometimes things from earlier drafts kind of stay in the final draft, and then I should have explained it better. But for me, so here's how it is. So Goblin goes to the treasure room, and in the treasure room there is this statue with the same green gem that the girl has on her dress. And so for me, and here she is in the end. There we go. And she's got that same gem on her dress. So for me, she is Skeleton's great love, the great love of Skeleton's life, who was also sort of magicked into a statue. And then when the adventurers came, as soon as she was removed from the dungeon, the spell was broken. She came back to life. And she was like, well, I'm just going to go live with these goblins and my old friend Skeleton. So anyway, that's who she is in my mind.
Very good. Cool. Okay, let's see. Your favorite, kind of a two-part question. What's your favorite mythical creature? Do you have any unicorn-like creatures?
Oh.
These are two brothers. Mama, I don't have any mic on. The mic is on pause.
I don't know what my favorite mythical creature is. I can't decide. That's a tough one right now. It changes all the time. But I can tell you a unicorn answer. Hang on. Oh, I love mermaids. Actually, I like mermaids a lot. Like, it's not something I would have thought that I would have been one of my favorites, but they are. But I did it for. There's these little different drawing challenges that kind of come up online sometimes, and one of them was called Mermaid. So there's like, anyway, and everybody. It seemed like a lot of the artists that I followed on the internet were trying to draw a mermaid every day in May. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. That's silly. And then I did do one. And then my daughter, I think it was Ronia, who kept coming in and being like, did you do your mermaid today? And I was like, no, I didn't say I was going to do it every day. And then I ended up doing it every day. And I had such a good time with it that mermaids have become something that I think about, I don't know, putting into a story. But I will tell you, I'm looking for a specific, I've got the proofs. These are the proofs for the latest, so the latest Julia's book, Julia's House Goes Home, is not out yet. It'll be out in September, but I have some proof pages for it. This is for me to look over the printer sends them to me to look over. Here we go. Just to check everything over, see if it's printing well. So I'm going to give you guys a sneak peek on one of the pages in Julia's House Goes Home. There is a unicorn in that story. And there is the unicorn. So she finds her, just a second. Oh, hang on just a minute. Just a minute. My daughter's at the door. Okay. Can you tell him I'll be right there? Can you tell him I'll be right there? You can probably sign it yourself, Zita. What does that mean? It just means he needs somebody to sign for a package. You just sign your name on it. It's okay. Just say I can sign for it. Hello. It looks like I might have to sign a package right now.
That's fine. I can field some more questions, or I can
collect questions. This will only take me like 1 minute.
No problem. Go ahead. I'll get the questions ready to go. All right. So we've had a few questions. Let's see. How many do you think we've asked so far? We have 10 as our limit. So we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, I think. So we have a couple left. So I have written down, did you study writing in college? Are there going to be more Mighty Robot or Goblin books? Do you write any mystery for 9-year-old girls? Your favorite, we already asked those two. Let's see.
Okay, I'm back. Okay.
All right, perfect.
Yeah, so there's a unicorn in this next Julia's book.
Very good. This is my daughter Bridget. She was very excited about that. Another student would like to know if you studied writing or art in college.
Oh, if I studied writing or art in college? No, actually I did history. I studied history, which is like a gigantic story. So so I feel like what was helpful was that I got a lot of experience kind of retelling history, I guess, for papers and things. But yeah, no, sometimes I wish I had done a little bit of that. I did some courses in painting after college, and that was a lot of fun. So I didn't go to art school, but I did like some painting programs overseas and stuff, and that was nice.
Are you gonna add any real creatures to your books?
Like what do you mean by real creatures?
Like maybe butterflies or birds, something like that?
Right. Like, yeah. I don't know. I feel like for Julia, it depends on the book, but in Julia's world, she kind of takes special care of the creatures that are, magical or mythical. And in Julia's story, it's kind of because they're like almost forgotten. So I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe I will. Maybe I should. Julia's House started out, ideas grow out of the funniest things, and they kind of develop on their own and can start as something very different. In the very, very first time I drew Julia, the idea for the book was called Julia and Her Lion. So I don't know. Maybe I'll go back to that someday. So yeah.
Someone had asked how you plan. So maybe that's a little bit of what you're sharing here, your thought process. But do you have a specific process you follow for planning your stories?
I do. And I'll grab one more thing to show and tell, just to show how I plan. Let me quickly grab this. And one of these. Okay, so I don't know which these are. I have stacks and stacks of Moleskine notebooks and these big recycled paper sketchbooks. And so in the recycled paper sketchbooks, so I use one of these for each project usually has one of these and one of these. And this is usually an everyday book. So it'll have, what will it have in it? What's a good page? Let's see if a good page. Yeah, pages like this will look like they will just look like this, like a bunch of notes, story notes, and
Here you go. Hey, Claire Bear.
oh, it even says writing is rewriting. So I guess I think about that a lot. And then just sketches and doodles, character sketches, ideas, sometimes short comics that I'm thinking about. A lot of lists, and weird little characters, things. And then this is much more of a, so this, in these I'll be maybe working out stories themselves, and at the very same time I'll be filling, this is actually mostly empty and full of loose sheets. But in these I'll be like doing a lot of visual development for things. So anyway, that's sort of how that works. I usually have a big notebook and a little notebook going, and yeah.
All right, I think I have 2 more questions for you. Sound good?
Sounds perfect.
Okay. One more is a lot of questions about up and coming. So more goblins, more Mighty Jack, more Mighty Robot.
Yes, it will be, next thing's coming out. So in September, Julia's House Goes Home comes out, which that one I'm pretty happy with. I think that'll be, I had one of the best times painting that book. And I think the story came together pretty well. It's going to be like the last of the Julia stories. And then right now, I am working on another graphic novel, and it's called Things in the Basement. So it's a brand new story, and it's about a boy who, right now, it is that he lives in a big old house. They've moved into a big old house, and his mother has twins, and you can see like 4 feet, like 2 little sets of feet, and there are 3 socks, and so one of the twin socks is missing, and is probably, they do they have their laundry down in the basement. So she sends, and the boy's name is Milo, the older brother, and so he's probably, I don't know, I don't want to say how old he is, I'm not sure, but he's a little bit nervous about going down in the basement, except that's where the laundry is. And his mom asks, Milo, can you go down and get, find the twins' missing sock in the basement? And so he goes down into the basement, and he does not find the sock. And maybe it's behind, he doesn't know where it might be, but it might be, he has to go to maybe towards the back of the basement to look for it. Maybe behind the furnace, I don't know. And he goes back behind the furnace, and he notices there's a door back there. And, you know, they haven't been living in this house forever. And it's an old basement. It's an old house, like a Victorian house. And there's a room in the back of the basement that he didn't realize was there. And so he goes into that room. It's another like little stone room back in the back. And in that room, he really wants to go back up now. He doesn't want to go down into the basement anymore. He's getting a little nervous. But behind a brick, or behind some rubble, he finds an old, like almost just like a sock that's not the twin sock, but is a much like almost like a stocking. And but then he sees something skitter across the floor, and it's got the twin sock, and it goes into the corner, and in the corner of that back room, there's like a staircase, and it's going down. And so what happens is Milo ends up going on an adventure, and he realizes that this basement just keeps going down and keeps getting bigger, and there's a whole world under there that just goes down and down and down, and that's it. And then he keeps going on this quest, under, down, down, down. And I won't tell you the rest of the story, but it's what I'm working on now.
That sounds very exciting.
It's gonna be interesting. It's a chance to draw a lot of like ghosts and creepy, like things that should be, that might seem spooky, but will end up being more sweet, I think. I hope. We'll see. I don't know. I'm talking about something that's still way in development. But
That one's awesome.
Behind the scenes, it does sound awesome.
It's like, I'm hoping it's gonna be like fun spooky. So
You have there's a lot of comments that I'll just let you read through later about creatures, that wondering what creatures, or if you'll ever consider some of the creatures.
oh, okay.
in
Yeah.
there. But I
Yeah.
think one other question that came, I'll have this be our final question, was if you've ever had any of your drafts or books rejected. Have you ever been rejected?
Oh, yes. In fact, it depends. Like, yeah, there have been stories that have kind of, yeah, not either not worked out or not been published. But then there are other stories for like when I think about that, like I think about Mighty Jack. And Mighty Jack, I started, I think 10 years before I actually made the actual book. And between then and then I had pitched that to my publisher and they were like, oh, it's nice, but no, thank you. It was not, it felt like sort of like a not right now kind of rejection. And it was pretty early on. And so then Mighty Jack just stayed in my notebooks for years after that. And then I thought, that one's done. That one's, I'm not going to do it. But then
Liam Evans.
yeah, I circled around back to it and changed a bunch of stuff and found out that the core of the story still kind of worked. And so I changed a lot of things about that book. And then it did get picked up. So yeah. So yes and no and yes, I guess.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for answering all of our questions in such a personal and in-depth way. I feel like we got a view into your process.
Oh, thank you so much.
To us.
There
So,
were zombies in the basement.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys all for being so interested. It's always really good to talk to people when they're really excited about it. So
can we all say thank you and farewell? Thank you so much.
thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Really, really
It was fun.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your questions.
Thank you.
Question.
Thank you.
Question.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Question.
Bye.
One more thing.